This video is sponsored by Paperlike. Okay boomers, today we're going to take a look at Medibang Paint for the iPad. I previously did a video on whether or not IBIS Paint X would be good enough for professional work, and then many of you asked for my thoughts on Medibang Paint as well. So first off, I just want to let you guys know that this is not going to be a very comprehensive review. I just want to give you my thoughts as somebody who's used to using much more professional software and other devices for my artwork. So my strategy for testing Medibang was simply to sit down with it for a few hours and try my best to create something similar to what I do in Procreate or in Clip Studio Pro on my Cintiq. So as far as the pros and cons go, I will be comparing Medibang to Procreate, Clip Studio Paint, and Photoshop, and IBIS Paint X as well. So let's go ahead and start off with the pros, and there's actually a lot of good ones here. The first is that it took me exactly 19 minutes and 44 seconds to get used to the app. After that, I felt comfortable enough to start on my first few drawings of Nico. As with any free app, there are ads, but they stay out of your way for the most part with this app. You actually only see the ads before and after you close the canvas, like we just saw when I was in the kind of open gallery area. And then now if I come over here and then I go to close canvas, you'll see an ad like that. This is way better than IBIS Paint in my opinion, because you don't have to look at any ads while you work. So you actually feel like you're using, a premium solid piece of software to do your artwork in. You had to look at ads, really long video ads, to get any new brushes as well, which is not something you have to do here. It's really just a few seconds and then you're back to normal. Now, speaking of ads, you can purchase a remove ad option for $8, and that will also come with a few other perks, but I'll get into whether or not it's really worth it later on in the video. Now, another great thing that I really like about Medibang Paint is that it seems to be very well optimized for the iPad Pro, a lot more than IBIS Paint X was. I could actually easily create a 6,000 by 6,000 pixel canvas like this one here. Didn't give me any hassle or any problems. It didn't limit me at all. And I didn't really feel any excessive lag while working in this canvas. And I have quite a few layers here. Only a few of them are really intensive, but still, I felt fine. And when I switch apps and reopen Medibang, so I'm going to switch over here. Let's go to Pinterest, which is really known for refreshing a lot. But you see, I'm here, I'm refreshing. Let's go ahead. Let's open up another app. Let's actually just open up Procreate here. See this recent drawing I did of Hannah Kim. And yeah, let's go back into Medibang and let's see what happens. You see, all it does is really just blink, and then I'm back to normal and I can get started painting just like I was. In IBIS Paint, you couldn't really do that. If you did what I just did and you came back, you would have found yourself back at the gallery, not in your canvas anymore, and then you'd have to open it up, wait for that process, and it would have taken forever. So I really like this for its time-saving capability. Now, at first, I was going to say this next thing was a con, because the default brushes that come with Medibang Paint really suck. I tried my best and I could not find myself wanting to use any of them except for maybe the pen brushes. But the cool thing is they have a lot of free brushes online. So all you have to do is click that plus here, hit add brushes, make an account, which is free. You can do that pretty quickly. And then you can just download each of these. Unfortunately, you have to do it one by one, but you can download any of these that you want. And a lot of these brushes are really, really good actually. So this is something that I really find really useful, and it's a pro in my opinion. The only problem though is that the pencil brushes, let me show you here, I've actually downloaded a few, look really bad with really large canvases. So if I go over to the brush settings here and I decrease the size to like a normal pencil on the size of a canvas, it looks okay. But let's say I want to use the effect where I tilt my pencil right here and I get a much larger stroke. If I increase that size, you can see how weird it looks. It looks like a really, really badly tuned grunge brush. It's just really, really odd, and it's not something that I really recommend anyone to do. So I'd hope that there was a way to, tweak the settings for the textures, but there really isn't. There's a lot of really limited options in the brush settings, so you just have to deal with that. So that's the kind of one little downside to that pro I mentioned. There's also another really cool setting called the correction setting. So if you go to more here and you see correction, that number basically tells you how many samples or how aggressively Medibang is going to smooth the line that you draw. So if I do it all the way to 0 here, go back to the brush settings, decrease the brush size, and I come back here, you can see that it's 0 latency as far as we're concerned, and it's just super quick. And, the lines, if I try to draw a straight line, it looks like this if I slow down. But if I turn the correction up to let's say 15, or 16 or 18, so that you can really see, it's starting to slow down a little bit. But if I go to 10, where I really like it to be, it's almost not even noticeable where the lag is. It's just like perfect. It works really, really nicely, really smoothly. This is just like line smoothing, Streamline, Stabilizer, and all these different programs that are out there. And I actually like it better than the one in Procreate. And in Procreate, as soon as you get to around 25%, it starts to feel like it's a lag thing or a latency issue. But here it's really smooth, and I almost didn't notice it until I, pushed it all the way to 16 and 18 when I was doing my testing. All right, so let's talk about the cons. One quick con is that you can't, double tap to undo and then hold, double tap and hold to undo. You have to actually double tap and then keep double tapping. I also found it weird that if you want to redo, you have to double triple tap. So it's like this. Really interesting. It's kind of fun, but it gets annoying at some point. I'd really like to just do this, and then it would keep going like it does in Procreate, but it doesn't do that here. But it's not too big of a deal. But yeah, the next few cons, or actually the rest of the cons, are pretty severe. And although I did have quite a few good things to say about Medibang, my overall experience was much more worse than it was with Ibis Paint. And I actually got myself a headache after spending 4+ hours in it yesterday. So let's get into it. We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you a message from this week's sponsor, Paperlike. If you've ever felt that digital displays were too slippery for you, you should pick up Paperlike 2 today. It's a quality matte screen protector that adds a lot of grain to your display, giving you a realistic and natural feel to your drawing. It's like having the rough texture of a screenless tablet and the visual feedback of a display all in one. No matter how much I enjoy working on my big Cintiq, I can't help but come back to my iPad Pro for sketching because it feels that good. Pick up yours today with the link in the description box below. So first off, the layout and UI of this app is pretty bad. There are just too many windows that are cluttering up the space, and even though I can hide some of them, it never feels as clean as some of the other apps out there for the iPad. And I still can't figure out how to get rid of this color window, which is just this annoying cutout in the corner of my canvas. Now, I can't really confirm this, but overall, I feel like Medibang just doesn't register my pencil taps nearly as accurately as often as the other apps. And I really kind of feel like this is true because when I first opened the app, it would ask me like twice about these weird Bluetooth questions, and that's really something that's handled at the OS level. The application itself should not really worry about the connection of the stylus that you're using. So the double tap of the stylus as well, the Apple Pencil 2, only registered about half the time for me. It's like when you're painting and you're going in there really fast and you double tap and it's not perfectly in this area on this flat edge, it doesn't work. And that kind of happens across the board, but it's really bad with Medibang in my experience. Now you could say to just stop using the double tap feature, but I'm gonna get into another con that's really gonna show you why I basically am forced to rely on the double tap feature. Overall, this whole experience is giving me the impression that Medibang was really tailored for a much cheaper experience, the lower end iPads, and it's probably not a good idea for me to have tested it on the iPad Pro, but who knows, we'll see in the future. Now again, the button layout and the icons are also really terrible in my opinion. If you see here, this is the real lasso tool that we're all used to, but this is the one that I end up clicking the most because it has a pencil there and it looks like I can actually customize it and draw it myself. So I always click that one, but that's not the correct one. It's really this one right here. And I double tapped it and it looks like it opened up the menu automatically, which is actually a good thing. I appreciate that. But the other thing that I really hate is that it always defaults to this square one. And, I feel like most people who use the lasso tool for art, you want to draw your own. You never want to use a square. So I hate that that's not the default. And every time I want to come back to this and use it, if I come back to the brush and then let's go back to the lasso tool again, it will be set to... Okay, see, I'm already picking the wrong one again, but it will be set to the square, and it just adds all of these clicks that make everything so much slower. To move the layers around, someone actually helped me with this in a live stream. I was trying to move the layers and slide them around to reorganize them, but you actually have to hold and then it activates and then slide it. That's okay, but I feel like every other program I've used recognizes the action of a drag. A drag in the canvas means to draw, obviously, but a drag in the menu should obviously mean to move something. But I feel like, having to wait that extra time again, adds a lot of time and makes working much, much less comfortable and fast. Now, coming back to the lasso tool, that tool itself is terrible. And I actually am scared to test it out here because I don't want to mess up this drawing because I already did. I don't know if you can tell. I was messing around with it to try to demonstrate this to you guys, and it like wouldn't let me undo what I did. And I ended up with her face being stuck on her shoulder here. And then when I wanted to move it back, it took her bra strap with her. And I was like, okay. But if you look really closely, you see like I haven't been able to fix it perfectly. So the issue I have with it is that personally for me, I can't really visualize what I'm drawing as clearly as most artists can or most other artists can at my level. However, I'm really good at judging the quality and accuracy of my drawings, so I really often like to depend on the lasso tool to make changes really frequently as I go along. But unfortunately here, it takes forever to use and I'm always picking the wrong tool. And so once I do pick the right tool and I come here and I do this selection, so let's just show this test skin layer that I did that I ended up deciding didn't look good, and I select that, it shows a clear indication of what you selected, right? But if I want to rotate it, we have these two symbols here. Clearly, this is the one you're going to pick. That one looks familiar and is in the same symbol that you see in every other app. That's like the transform tool. But here, all it does is move the selection and then what you have in there. And if I move it, you see it like lags and like I can't really place it accurately with this blue tone on. It's super annoying. And I can't rotate and I can't do anything else that you would expect with what that symbol represents in every single other app. And so I undo there to finish that off. And so the real transformation tool that I'm used to is this tool right here. So what this tool allows me to do is I can click on it, and then now I have the ability to move it around as I please. And here, this is really unintuitive. But I realized after some testing that you can rotate stuff, but you have to rotate it, by just imagining how this would work. In Procreate, there's a little green icon here that you can easily click on and rotate. Also, I found as well, this is also annoying. I can't undo anymore by double tapping. I have to come down here, which makes this whole process feel a lot more intense and constrained. So I have to just keep my finger here, and like it just feels like such a big deal, and I shouldn't be doing this even though I can freely do it in any other app. Another thing that was really hard for me to kind of deal with was changing the sizes of stuff when you're doing smaller selections. It's really hard to pick it. I really don't like this whole thing. It's just so cumbersome, and it makes it such a big deal to transform things. And then when I get back out of it, it still has this selected, and I feel like it should be obvious that I don't want this selected. I'm done with the transformation and I want to go back to painting or drawing. This might sound like nitpicking and a lot of really weird frustrations to you, but these are things that I do like 10 to 20 times per hour when I'm drawing. So you can imagine how frustrated I can get over 4 hours trying to get the sketch to look right and have good appealing proportions. But, Medibang is just working against me to get that done. Another issue I have is with the cursor. So I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see this, but if I go to the brush menu here, and let's pick the brush that I actually ended up liking to use for sketching, which is just a small version of the airbrush. And I come here and let's go to this layer again. I'm going to try to increase the brush size. If we look here, if you look really closely, you can see the size of the brush is not even close to the size of the circle. And so what that's doing is the circle is the size of the maximum brush capability for what all my settings are at. So naturally I turned off size by pressure, but it still does that. Clearly the brush is not even close. There's no portion of the soft fall off of the brush that's actually reaching the edge of the size that I have there. And so it's so annoying because this is as hard as I feel comfortable pressing on it right now, and it's still not even coming close to reaching the maximum size. So I think this really needs to be completely redone. What I like about Procreate is that it will adaptively change the size of this little cursor as I add more or remove pressure from the pencil tip. And so that's really cool. I always know exactly how close I need to get with my brush if I want to, make a fine adjustment to something like the edge of a stroke to make it look more aesthetic. Speaking of global settings and some secret setting being in the background that doesn't let me change, the pressure curve for this app doesn't exist. You just have to change intensity of the pressure from light to heavy. And this is not ideal for me, because what I like to do in a lot of apps is to, I'm gonna actually draw a pressure curve for you here, is I'll set the pressure curve. Usually the default will be like this, but I'll actually like to set the pressure curve to something like this, so that as I'm just doing some sketches, it's easy for me as a heavy-handed person to have light sketches and not have really heavy-handed, ugly sketches. And then when I really want to, I can quickly get into the darker values for emphasizing different areas of my sketch. Now, the number one worst thing about Medibang, and this is kind of a personal thing, but I feel like if you like drawing mostly, this is still going to affect you. And so this is basically the eraser tool and everything about it. The default eraser tool is, if I double tap here, you can see it didn't work then, and then now it works. It's always the second time. It's just like plugging in a USB. But if I use this eraser tool, it's like has no settings there. And even if I hit soft edge, you can see here, this edge is not that soft. Like, it's not good. It's really, really sharp. Like, look at that difference. It's barely different. You know, it has a kind of a soft edge to it, but still, it's not like if I could use an airbrush to erase. Procreate would let me make whatever brush I can use to paint a brush that I could use to erase, but here we can't do that. Now, there are some brushes you can use to erase. And so if I go back to the brush menu, I can hit eraser soft, and you'll see if I go to increase the size, this is a brush that I'm used to working with. This is the kind of soft erasing brush that I can use to erase my sketches and keep them looking clean and aesthetic and not really too digitally. I'm sure you've heard me say that before. I don't really like that look when your sketches using traditional brushes start looking really digital because you have an eraser that's super sharp. Now, like I mentioned before, the layout of this app is really cumbersome, so trying to open up the brush menu every time to switch from pencil to eraser just to erase something small is like pulling teeth, because I have to look for eraser soft and read that tiny little text every single time. And so I feel like that one alone is also why I just got this really ridiculous headache. And there's still more problems with the eraser, because if I switch to this soft eraser, it sounds like it's a good thing, you know, it's a good compromise, just get used to that, right? No, if I come to this layer here, let me show you this. This is insane. What happens when you use a soft eraser is it acts like if you're painting with white and Photoshop and you've set that brush to like add or glow in Clip Studio. So let me show you how it erases. You see, it kind of like erases unevenly. You know, like, see how it looks as if it acts as if it's vacuuming up the ink on my canvas. Rather, see how like there's some left in the middle, but it's like so weird. It's like vacuuming up the ink rather than actually erasing properly. Like, I didn't ask you to do that. That's not what I wanted. So when I'm here trying to clean up my line work, it just ends up being a nightmare. And so I end up having to just say, oh, well, I guess I'll just try to love that really hard edge look that I get when I use, you know, this eraser when I double tap. And so when I do that, I double tap again to go back to the brush, and then I have to remember, okay, click here and then find airbrush again to go back to start painting. And so yeah, it's been a long journey, and I'm really tired, and I'm really glad I don't have to use Medibang anymore. All right, so now that you've made it through the end of my rant, Medibang Paint for iPad is not, you know, too bad of an app. It's still usable. It still has a lot of features that, you know, people can make use of. I still was able to do this drawing that I'm pretty happy with, and is I'd say equal in par to my Procreate stuff, although I wouldn't really zoom in too close. But yeah, it's not terrible, but I strongly recommend you look at IBIS Paint X or even Autodesk Sketchbook first if you really want to have a free option. I also only recommend purchasing the ad-free version of this app if you have Medibang on your PC, which is a thing you can do. You can sync things back and forth between your PC and the cloud, and you're a beginner and you really like the different comic features that are here. Other than that, you know, if you're a beginner and you're thinking about spending $8 to upgrade this app, just buy Procreate. It's $2 more. You're going to be way, you know, better off using that, even though, you know, I will say the blending tool here is really nice and actually makes sense. But, you know, I feel like that's just, for all of the little things, it's really not worth it to get this app. It also allows you to, you know, export in more settings and have groups here. But again, you know, I feel like if you want that. If you really need that, you know who you are. But if you're a beginner, I just don't recommend spending money on this app. And especially if you are a more advanced artist, I just don't recommend this app at all. It misses the mark, too many marks on too many of the most simple features that I feel like are necessary in a drawing or an art program. So yeah, I just stay away from it for me. So that's it for me today, everyone. Let me know in the comments though, what other apps you want me to review or test for the iPad. And also let me know if I'm a simp for drawing Nico. But other than that, I've been Ergo Josh, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Okay, Boomer, whatever you say, Boomer.